I mean, come on. Listen, there has never been a conspiracy in this country.
This is how to respond to a conspiracy theorist. Quickly, firmly, and disparagingly. To simplify, let's reduce the response to this. Shut up, conspiracy theorist. Observe.
I mean, let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
Is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist. For variety, the eminently rational Penn and Teller present an alternative response.
We're Penn and Teller, and conspiracy theories are bullshit.
Good job, boys. Let's try again.
If there is any conference which required transparency, which required democratic accountability, it is the Bilderberg Conference.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th.
Good job, Mr. President.
I don't believe in this notion of some sort of secret societies controlling people. But of course, in any political system, there are sort of over the table and under the table arrangements.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
What do you want me to talk about?
Yeah.
A fraud? No, it wasn't a fraud, but I'll be glad to talk to you if you'll shut up and let me talk now. The United States government actually did carry out on our citizens experiments involving radiation. In one scientist injected plutonium into 18 patients without their knowledge. In another, doctors exposed indigent cancer patients to excessive doses of radiation, a treatment from which it is virtually impossible that they could ever benefit.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
Were U.S. government officials aware of drug smuggling in and around the Contra movement? And did they simply choose to ignore it? One U.S. senator says, absolutely.
There's no question in my mind there is a complicity in the flow of drugs into this country, period.
Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
Also, were you a member of Skull and Bones from college and Bush? Were you in the same secret society as Bush? Were you in Skull and Bones? Thank you for cutting my mic. Thank you. Are you going to arrest me? Excuse me. Excuse me. What are you arresting me for? Whoa, 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 whoa. Don't chase me. I didn't do it. Come over. Ow! Ow! Ow!
Any questions? This public service announcement was brought to you by the Friends of the Department of Homeland Security, the Information Awareness Office, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the President's Working Group on Financial Matters, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Rhodes Roundtable Group, and the Bohemian Club. And remember, ignorance is strength. Shut up, conspiracy theorist.
For a while.
Yes, I did.
Did you pay attention to the election? We got a new mayor here. Bloomberg is up.
I didn't even know there was an election. I honestly don't. I don't pay attention at all. It's funny, bankers get bonuses of anywhere. The upper echelon get from like 10 million up to 100 million, and the president of the United States makes like 400 grand a year. So right there, I watched enough wrestling to see a rigged game, and there's like people with YouTube channels making as much as the leader of the free world. So I just think he's set up to be bribed, and you act accordingly. So basically anybody who comes at me going these the conservative right or these liberals, like, I just zone out. I can't even talk to you if you're actually still looking at it like those are two choices that you're getting. You're not. It's the same. Once you get past a certain level, it just seems like it's
all the same.
Yeah, you've jumped in the river. And you act accordingly, or you get that convertible ride in Dallas.
That's the guy when you are a major conspiracy theorist.
I'm a realist, though.
Yes.
Conspiracy theory has gotten a bad name where now it's become synonymous with like moronic thought. Like if you're into conspiracy theory, if you think like the bankers need to be stopped, then you also think the moon is made out of cheese, and you think that there's shifters and like lizard people. You know, they just try to knock it down. It's like this country started with a conspiracy. That's how it came. We won, so they're considered heroes and rebels, you know, whatever, revolutionaries. But if they lost, they would be hanged for conspiring. Yeah. It's not like it spontaneously happened.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden everybody just picked up a gun and started shooting at the British. You know, they sat around.
They planned it out.
They planned it out.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting tired of these people.
It's funny when you said we won. I'm like, did we really win? But I understand what you're saying. Now,
is that African American thing?
Yeah.
On the morning of April 19, 1995, a decorated Gulf War combat vet blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City using a truck bomb that he didn't build in a Ryder truck that he didn't rent with the help of a passenger who didn't exist. Having just gotten away with the largest act of terrorism on U.S. soil to date, the Fort Bragg-trained Special Forces Sheep Drip Dropout blended in with the crowd by making his getaway in a car without a license plate and was immediately pulled over. The ATF was the supposed target of the attack, but luckily all of their agents were out of the office that morning. Later that day, the president boldly declared,
"We will find the people who did this.
And
when we do, justice will be swift, certain, and severe."
Except for
John Doe number 2.
John Doe number 2.
John Doe number 2.
Who, according to the FBI, never existed. In McVeigh's unprecedented 3.5-week trial, the prosecution didn't show the CCTV footage of him and John Doe number 2 parking the Ryder truck. Didn't explain why 24 separate witnesses mass hallucinated the existence of John Doe number 2. Didn't explain why the government was testing truck bombs and the Army was storing Ryder trucks at Camp Gruber right before the bombing, and didn't talk to the FBI informants who blew the whistle on the plot. But they did collaborate with the CIA, and they did convict McVeigh as the lone wolf bomber and Terry Nichols as his bomb-constructing accomplice. Still, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists, including 300 bombing victims, insist on talking about facts and evidence and refuse to simply believe what they've been told a million times by people in tailored suits with well-coiffed hair. They quote the U.S. Army Brigadier General and the FBI crime lab whistleblower and the inventor of the neutron bomb who point out the physical impossibility that the Ryder truck bomb did the damage to the building, but that doesn't matter because if there were other bombs in the building that day, we would have heard about them.
The second explosive was found and defused. I think he said another bomb.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found.
They then found a third device, which was also larger than the first.
And I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb.
The FBI claims to have lost the footage showing McVeigh and John Doe number 2 parking the truck in front of the Murrah building that morning, but that's understandable because the Bureau has a lot of important evidence to store. Terry Nichols insists the FBI was involved in the plot, but thankfully a judge has saved us the trouble of listening to him by preventing lawyers from deposing him. There was a bomb squad truck parked across the street 2 hours before the blast, but that just shows the authorities were prepared for anything. And
other documents obtained by 2020 show that someone called the Executive Secretariat's office at the Justice Department in Washington and said the Murrah building had been bombed. But this was 24 minutes before the blast.
But that just shows the public was unusually vigilant that morning. Also,
apparently, before the bombing, Governor Frank Keating's brother, Mark, had been working on a novel about a terrorist bombing in Oklahoma City. Stranger still, one of the characters in the novel was named Thomas McVeigh.
But that's probably just a coincidence. McVeigh wrote a letter to his sister where he admitted to being a secret Special Forces operative and he complained to friends of the pain in his ass from an Army-implanted microchip, but that's crazy because if he didn't actually leave the Army in 1991, there would be proof of that. This man never existed, and if you say otherwise, you're a crazy government-hating nutjob who deserves to be locked in a cage for the rest of your life. Likewise, him, her, them, her, and him. And him and him. McVeigh was not executed on May 16, 2001 as scheduled because
the FBI had failed to turn over thousands of pages of evidence to McVeigh's defense attorneys.
But the execution went ahead on June 11th. In a highly unusual and secret agreement, no autopsy was performed. One witness said he was still breathing, and the prison officials admitted his hearse was a decoy. Then, the case was officially closed. This is the story of OKC as told to you by the same truth-tellers behind
perhaps a profoundly lonely man who craved attention but found consolation in doing good.
And
And the helicopter we were traveling in was forced down after being hit by an RPG.
And
we're with the rebels. And he said, oh, you're with the rebels? And they started beating him. Oh, you're with the rebels? Don't you support Bashar?
And if you question any part of this story, you are a paranoid, wingnut, birther, truther, tenther, prepper, conspiracy loon who should feel guilty for having been born. If you love baseball, fluffy kittens, hot dogs, Barbie, Star Wars, and freedom, you will never ever bring up any of these points ever again. Ever. This message has been brought to you by the Friends of the FBI, ATF, DOJ, CIA, SPLC, MSM, and the U.S. Army. And remember, ignorance is strength.
First of all, I think a lot of conspiracies do go on. I agree with historian Carl Oglesby. A multitude of conspiracies contend in the night. I think it's normal mammalian behavior. On the other hand, conspiracy buffs tend to be somewhere between mildly paranoid and full-blown clinical paranoid, and I don't trust many of them very much. I think the only conspiracy theorists I really take seriously are Buckminster Fuller, Noam Chomsky, and Carl Oglesby, and all the rest of them seem in varying degrees of paranoia.
But you don't feel that the whole field is just simply paranoid fantasy?
Absolutely not. The idea that conspiracies don't occur is like saying snow never happens. It's contradicted by all the facts of history. You pick up any book of history and you find they're talking about conspiracies in ancient Rome, conspiracies in Renaissance Italy, conspiracies within the British government in the Elizabethan age. History is largely a history of conspiracies. To claim conspiracies don't exist is it's an article of faith, like the Darwinian idea that there's no intelligence anywhere and everything happened by accident. Or the Christian idea that a guy named Yahweh built the whole universe, or living on a cloud a few miles above Israel and sending fire and brimstone down on everybody who infuriated him, or seriously vexed him, I should say.
You distinguish between fungible and non-fungible in relationship to conspiracy theory. Can you explain those terms?
Fungible is a legal term. It's related to the RICO law. Well, it originally started in mercantile law. A product is fungible if every part of it is the same. Like if you're selling corn and it's 90% corn and 10% junk you found in the backyard, it's non-fungible. Gold brick, it looks like it's solid gold, but it's mostly lead. That was a very popular swindle in the 19th century. The theory of fungibility, as I apply it to conspiracy theories, is when people go really bonkers and they say every member of the group is equally evil and they're all involved in the conspiracy and you can't trust any of them, etc. That's the kind of thing that Adolf Hitler taught. And I think those theories are always crazy, whether they pick on the Jews or the Jesuits or the Freemasons or whoever they pick out. I don't believe in fungible conspiracies. There are degrees of involvement. Is he witting? That's a question they use a lot in the CIA. That means how much does he know about what he's doing? Another useful term to remember is useful idiot. I think that started in British intelligence. A useful idiot is somebody who's working for an intelligence agency but doesn't know it. The theories I find really dangerous are like anti-Semitism, which led to unprecedented horrors in this century, and horrors on lesser scales because they had lesser technology throughout the history of Christendom. And I find a lot of feminism to be equally nefarious in implication, although they haven't had enough power to do anything about it. But some of the feminists, when they talk about men, they sound just like Adolf Hitler talking about Jews. It's really scary. The parallel is so damn close. And then there are these theories where all the Freemasons in the world are part of one gigantic conspiracy for the Freemasons to take over everything and run everything. I know too many Freemasons to take that seriously. Freemasons are as miscellaneous a group as the Presbyterians, the plumbers. You find all sorts of people in the Freemasons, and they don't all have the same ideas.
So the way you use the term, it means a kind of absolute blanket generalization about any group.
It's treating a group as homogeneous. Homogeneous would be a good synonym for fungible.
So you feel we can throw those conspiracies out just based on their fungibility?
On the face of it, everybody has different fingerprints. There are no two brains that are alike. So the idea that you can make generalizations about a large and miscellaneous group and they'll be true about every member of that group, that I think is the most nefarious form of stupidity on the planet.
Well, what's so interesting with that particular form of conspiracy theory is that it contains what you call a strange loop.
Oh yeah, when you say Bertrand Russell looked into the evidence and concluded that the bankers of Europe consisted 90% of Gentiles and only 10% of Jews. So the Jewish bankers conspiracy is a myth, and they'll come back with Bertrand Russell was Jewish himself. He changed his name. Then you got to try to prove that Bertrand Russell wasn't Jewish. You know? I actually got into that argument once with somebody about Hugh Hefner. They were convinced he was Jewish. All pornography is created by Jews. Hefner is a pornographer, therefore Hefner is Jewish. I told him he's a Presbyterian. No, he changed his name. Sartre is the only one who's ever commented on this, the delight in being stupid. If you make up your mind you're going to defend a really stupid position, you can get every intelligent person in the room hopping mad. No matter how rational they think they are, they'll eventually they'll get more emotional than you are if you just keep repeating the same stupid thing. This is in an essay he wrote called The Anti-Semite and the Jew. And if you're not Jewish and you try to argue with an anti-Semite about his prejudices, the next thing you know, you are yelling and shouting and acting like a fanatic more than he is, because he's saying so many stupid things like, you must be Jewish yourself. No, how about you? Well, then your wife is Jewish and she's corrupted you. No, my wife isn't Jewish either. Well, then it was your grandfather. And, you know, when you get into this infinite regress like that, eventually you lose your temper, and then you feel you're as dumb as the guy you're arguing with. Oliver Wendell Holmes called that the hydrostatic principle of controversy. The fools drag everybody down to their own level. Well, Sartre noticed this particularly in anti-Semites. But I've noticed it in all sorts of dogmatic people, that whole strain, like the flat earthers. You get into an argument with a flat earther, and I guarantee you lose your temper before he loses his, because he's enjoying being stupid. He's enjoying making you angry just by sticking to a position which he knows nobody else can believe. That also gives you a feeling of belonging to the elite. Everybody else is too stupid to see the truth, but I belong to the small group that knows the truth. After you believe that, you're ready when the leader says, here's your cyanide Kool-Aid, have a drink. You go, oh yeah, sure. And you swallow it all down.
Do you believe that most conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorists are working from a basis of a rational and logical will to determine the facts of a situation? You know, is it scientific, or is this completely some kind of emotional?
Well, it covers the gamut. It's I like to think of things on a scale of 1 to 10. And I would say some conspiracy theories on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is sanity and 10 is total raving lunacy, certifiably insane, as they say, I would say most conspiracy theorists are somewhere above 5 on that scale, and a lot of them have reached 10. But there are some that are pretty close to 1, like Carl Oglesby and a couple of other offbeat historians, Noam Chomsky, Buckminster Fuller, and me. Like I said, everything is under control. Conspiracy theories help make sense out of what otherwise seems a senseless world. That's why so many people believe them, including me sometimes.
How much do you think our own government operates on the basis of conspiracy theory?
Well, I think they worry about conspiracies more than most conspiracy buffs do. I think the government is full of people with guilty consciences, and they're constantly worried we're going to find out what they're really up to. And so they hire more and more spies to spy on us, to find out what we're doing and saying, to see if we're getting to be a real menace to them. And of course, that means they need more spies to spy on their spies, in case some of their spies are double agents, which is well known in the whole espionage business. So then they need a third order of spies to spy on the second order of spies. And eventually you end up with somebody like J. Edgar Hoover, who uses his power to blackmail the presidents of the United States. Stalin murdered 3 chiefs of the secret police in a row because they found out too much about his own secrets. And nobody murdered J. Edgar Hoover, at least I don't think so. I think he died of natural causes. But he was blackmailing presidents from Roosevelt on. He blackmailed every president who wanted to do something Hoover didn't. Like Nixon said in one of the Watergate tapes, well, Hoover performed. He would have scared hell out of them. He's got a file on everybody. You just sense the envy in Nixon. He wanted to file on everybody too. He was a rank amateur. Hoover had been at it for 50 years by then. And a lot of the files disappeared the day he died, by the way. Nobody will admit they know what happened to them. Somebody has those files and is still blackmailing people. The government is more afraid of us than we are of them. That's what I always emphasize when I'm talking to radical groups who think their phones are tapped. Well, of course your phone is tapped. If you've done anything to annoy the government, your phone is tapped. They've probably got a mail cover on you, too. But that just shows they're more afraid of you than you are of them. The government doesn't trust the people. And then they wonder why the people don't trust the government. Well, the people don't trust the government because they know we're being spied on all the time. At the last count I heard, there were over 200,000 lawyers working for the federal government. And you know how much harm a single lawyer can do? A single lawyer can ruin your whole life, you know, just one day in court. 200,000 lawyers devising modifications and amendments to laws and working for Congress and changing, you know. The bureaucracy, the Kafkaesque world they have created is so onerous, obnoxious, and unbearable to most of the citizenry that everybody bitches about the government at least part of the time. Ergo, the government knows they are not well loved, and they're wondering how many of us are joining militias or forming revolutionary communist parties like those nuts down in the South, or doing something else subversive to overthrow us. So they got to keep spying on us to make sure we're not getting too ornery. And the more the people discover the government is spying on them, the more they distrust.
I'm Joel Skousen, editor of World Affairs Brief. I'm a political scientist by training, was the former chairman of the Conservative National Committee during the Reagan administration, and have been active ever since in trying to alert people to what's going on in the world. This is very important to understand that there is real systematic good and evil in the world. The dialectic is where you create crises in order to induce good people to do things or accept things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. The reason for this, that you need to deceive people, and we're in all of this, we're talking about the Tea Party deception, we're talking about the deception of political parties. We need to understand that deception is something that has always been with us in the world and always will because of this systematic battle between good and evil. But there is a systematic good as well, and that is the role of conscience in people. And it's because certain people can sense that something's wrong, that evil has to use deception and dialectic in order to get people to do things in spite of conscience, in spite of sensing that something's wrong. In essence, when you create a big enough crisis, there's a feeling of panic. We have no choice. We have no power to resist. There's this feeling of futility. So even though people can sense what's right in conscience, they don't act according to it, or they follow along the path of least resistance because of the severity of the crisis. That's the reason why evil uses crises to change the world. In the same sense, the conspiracy has had the necessity of morphing into different organizations to be able to cover itself from discovery. We can go back, I think the conspiracy has been with us since the beginning of time. But when we begin, whether it's from Cain and Abel, or we talk about the Illuminati, starting in 1776, how ironic, you know, that there's this interplay between the movement of freedom in 1776 and the rise of a counter movement. It's almost as if Satan and God, or Satan follows and sees what God is trying to do to promote liberty and has a counter strategy in everything that comes about. There are key dates in history, like 1776, when you had a massive liberty for movement, whereby for the first time in history you'd had some very principled, libertarian-oriented people come into power. And at the same time you have this rise of the Illuminati. It got exposed. I believe it went underground and then began to use another organization, the Masonic lodges, to take its place. When that became exposed, they dropped out the lower levels of the Masonic so that they became rather as good old boy clubs, and they're still in use today. You can go into certain parts of Texas And you talk to people, and most people within a certain county are members of the lodge. And they know that if they get a traffic ticket, they can flash the ringer and they can get some type of immunity. Now, it isn't really illegal. It isn't anything to do with these broad-range conspiracies. But it is a good old boys network, and it allows people to rise within those networks and to be able to, and the higher-ups within those, to see, all right, who's corruptible, who's predictable, who can we bring along to a higher order or understanding. So it's my opinion that the Masonic level only participates in broad-range conspiracy issues above the 32nd or 33rd level. In the United States, in Europe, it's a different story. In Europe, the Masonic lodges have been much more deeply involved in conspiratorial, globalist, and New World Order issues. And we find the Masonic lodges are still very powerful in Italy especially, in Spain, Germany, and France. So what I'm saying or viewing is that conspiratorial forces morph into different forms. They use different crises. And above all, they are able to imitate and co-opt goodness in a variety of ways. It's important that to understand this is not a monolithic conspiracy of power. There are competing blocks. There's always competitors. Just like in the drug trade, the United States runs its own dark side drug trade to finance black operations. And higher-ups within the DEA and CIA are aware of these things. But there are always competitors coming up in the drug trade trying to piggyback onto this very, very lucrative profession. And so it is this conspiracy. A conspiracy of power has to give certain rewards to people. And that's why wealth is always a part of it, the inducement of wealth. It is not true, however, and I want to clarify one thing. Oftentimes in conspiratorial literature, such as in Allen's book or even in some of my uncle's book, you talk about the wealthy international bankers. Well, it is not true that every single international banker is involved in the conspiracy. It is not true that every wealthy banker is part of it. It is true that everyone who's part of it is wealthy. But it is not true that all big business is part of it or that all big banks are part of it. Almost all are now because they don't like competition and they tend to try to co-opt. But there is this continual competition of power. In the world scene, I believe that there are three predator centers of power. I believe the most powerful and the longest running structure of conspiracy to undermine liberty is what we call the Anglo-American Power Center. Centered primarily in London, but now has got most of its power transferred over to New York and the United States just because that's where most of the wealth is. The other power is Russia and the other power is China. I believe that they are competing. They're temporary allies because they know that eventually they're going to be in a war with the Anglo-American establishment. But eventually they will have to fight it out among themselves. The first step is to recognize when someone is parroting or repeating the establishment line. In other words, good people have to, and I'm trying to take this out of the issue of understanding the right or wrong of what they're saying. This is how deception occurs with good people. They see he's saying the truth, therefore he must be good. It works, therefore it must be right. Now, neither of those propositions are true. Things can work using false philosophies, using false mechanisms, using deception. People can say the right things for the wrong motive in order to promote themselves in ways of which will further deceive them. That's what disinformation is all about, is giving a certain portion of truth so that you can drop in major areas that are false. So it is not enough to judge what is being done in life by whether or not it's true or false. One must learn to recognize what is an establishment line of attack, an establishment direction, and learn who is parroting that, because real truth never goes very far along an establishment line without diverging from it significantly in truth. That is why the establishment always says our position is extremist, because we diverge from their establishment line on significant points, which they always label extreme. That's the way they get people to disregard truth that diverges from the establishment line. This happens whether it's establishment medical protocols. The best truths are outside those protocols. That isn't to say that everything within the establishment is false. Far from it. Most of it is right, most of it is good. But it's leading through the exclusion of critical truths, it's leading people in a direction will keep them blind and keep them from seeing the crucial truths. So, once you see someone parroting the establishment line, you have to ask, is he part of the establishment or is he not part of it? I'm going to take you through a truth diagram here of yes or no and then where to go from that. If a person is not part of the establishment, but he's parroting the establishment line, he's usually being used because of several reasons. One, either they're too ambitious. I put Mitt Romney in that category. Mitt Romney is not a corrupt individual, but he's someone bending over backwards so badly to please the establishment because he wants to be accepted by them. He wants to rise. He wants to be president. They can be predictably liberal or moderate. There are certain people who have an innate sense about right or wrong. There are certain people who have an innate sense about what's establishment and what's popular. And they seem like a compass to seek only for those things which will make them more popular. We see that with kids in school. There are people who are outsiders. They're always pushing the edge, whether for good or evil. And there's people who are right there in the middle of the road. They're afraid to do anything that will be criticized. They start to push beyond those subtle hints about don't go there or you don't have a need to know. And they actually have to be warned off with threats. And those threats can take place directly, threats to themselves. They first of all will start to threaten their job. If that doesn't get in the way and they actually become a whistleblower, they often start to threaten their family. And sometimes they threaten by pointing out another person who has somehow died by mysterious circumstances where it was ruled a suicide. And they then explain to them that it wasn't a suicide. That's a person who wouldn't be quiet, just like you. And there are various levels of threats of which they can escalate. But at the higher level, for people who are fully corrupted, the Bill Clintons of the world, for example, they use the promise of immunity. It's a very powerful thing. The promise that we can make sure that the things that we have on tape of you doing don't ever see the light of day. It's a combination of blackmail and immunity, and they see that all the time happening in government. They see somebody caught who's on the dark side of government, and they see a telephone going to the judge, and the judge lets him off, or the prosecutor, district attorney pleads it down. They see how immunity can be a real benefit to them in life. So that's some of the tactics of how they keep people at various different levels of corruption in the system, both incentives and for threats. On the good side, for instance, they know how to play the naive people. They know how to play the people who want recognition. So to recap, we have 4 different levels, I believe, or categories of how the conspiracy is managed in terms of its personnel and how it grows and ascends in power. The lowest level, the 4th level, are people who know and see enough to see that there's a control system but have been told or think that it's benevolent.
Beaming, gleaming, counting cash, thieving, corporations booming, revolutions looming. Educate the sleeping and send the human sheep in. We'll fill them full of fear and watch their freedom disappear. 1% wonder, flick a switch, thunder, no change, banknotes, open mind, anecdotes, radio and TV, crimes against humanity. We'll fabricate the news and build a nation made of fools. Tesla's free energy, oil and gas monopoly, pop stars and actors working with the bankers, fast cars, spirit scars, signing names to Lucifer, implant us with a chip. Feeling crack their money with teardrops, low pay, saving for your rainy day. Getting ill with our healthcare on the windowsill, taxing and warfare, iPads over childcare, oppression is the key. Open hearts unite with me. Now I'm setting free from the chains that I can't see. And I'm sick and tired of their lies. And I'll no longer be a victim of greed. You are free to be you, and I am free to be me. New day, another Stella, an eye on you, Mr. Rockefeller. Open mind, suicide, speak the truth or stay alive. Vegetables are slaughter, are you screaming for your daughter? Inject them so they breed, and then we'll milk them till they bleed. Calories and measurements, chemical ingredients, alcohol and smoking, taking money while we're joking. Pickpockets, big wallets, fingers in our power sockets. While we're on the grid, we'll always owe the money, kid. Now I'm setting free from the chains that I can't see. Now I'm sick and tired of their lies. Now I'll no longer be a victim of greed. You are free to be you, and I am free to be me. Living for the government, dying for retirement, saving hard for holidays, 9 to 5 our only way. Shit jobs, ball and chains, homeless men sleep in the rain. You'd better play the game, or you risk being the same. Good life, smartphones, all your friends yet all alone. United as a nation, or selfie stick vacation. Checking in or checking out, without a shadow of a doubt. They're storming on the loose, anonymous speak the truth. And I'm setting free from the chains that I can't see. And I'm sick and tired of their lies. Now I'll no longer be the victim of greed.